Good afternoon. We are now looking at Inv4801. And when we look at Inv4801, your stream is the new stream where they have changed the textbook. So they have changed the textbook for Inv4801. They are the ones who are going to be the first stream to deal with the new textbook for Inv4801. Now, when you look at the new textbook, you will see that there are some concepts which are still relevant, and there are some concepts which are going to be a little bit new to you, but I'm going to highlight those new concepts. But not that much has changed, although they've rearranged and streamlined some of the sections as well, right? So looking at Inv4801, you will see that if you look at the module outlay, they tell us that your module outlay, you're going to be having 11 topics, 11 topics that you're going to be doing. And from those 11 topics, there are going to be 18 learning units that you need to go through as well. Now, looking at these 18 learning units, you will see that the first learning unit, which is based on topic 1, looks at professionalism, right? Now, when you look at professionalism, you will see that the need for professionalism is arising from the recent need that has been highlighted, where you look at a lot of unethical practices that have been done by individuals in different professions as well. So because of that, it basically means that there is need, or there is an arising need for an emphasis for students to be able to understand exactly why is there a need for professionalism, and how does it impact the whole industry and the whole economy as a whole as well. So that's basically what we look at in topic 1 when we look at learning unit 1. Moving on to topic 2. Topic 2 looks at Fintech in investment management. So topic 1, the section has not been was not there in the previous textbook. So in the previous textbook, that section was not there, right? When you look at topic 2, we're looking at Fintech in investment management. So we are also acknowledging that over time, the effect of technological developments do have an impact on what? On investment management as well. So now we need to find out exactly, so how do we ensure that we embrace the evolution of information technology, and how do we ensure that we also encompass it as part of the what? Investment management processes that are going to be taken into account when we are now what? Dealing with clients as a investment management professional as well. So we need to see exactly how is the fintech world has evolved over the years, and how do we now ensure that we're able to actually utilize it and also improve efficiency in the provision of services, investment management services to the community at large as well. Then topic 3 looks at capital market expectations, right? Now, before we look at the breakdown of topic 3, which looks at capital market expectation, so far we have seen that the main relationship that you look at when you look at investment portfolio management, you will find that there is a client, and with the client, this is where you find the investment advisor. And then the investment advisor now links with the fund manager. So you find that the investment advisor is the link between the client and the fund manager, because the client, the investment advisor, sits down with the client and gathers information from the client on exactly what are the objectives of the client? What are the constraints that the client, what are the constraints that are going to be keeping the client from being able to achieve those objectives? Then they come up with a comprehensive analysis of the client. Then from there, the investment advisor now is the one that is going to be linking with the different fund managers now when it comes to now deciding on exactly what, how the client's investment are going to be, where the money is going to be invested, and how are they going to be able to now come up with a strategy to meet the client's objective. So when you look at portfolio management, you are now looking at the link between these three main parties. And remember, these ones are the ones that are going to be belonging to the investment house. So the investment house is the one that is going to be managing these two, so that they are now acting or what according to the client's what needs as well, or what the client has said that they want to be able to achieve. So that's basically the main relationship. So based on this skeleton of this main relationship, that's where you see that the issue of professionalism comes in, because there is need for professionalism both from the investment manager and the fund manager when dealing with what? With the client. So there has to be professional professional conduct from the investment advisor and the fund manager when dealing with the client. Then at the same time as well, this is where topic 2 also comes in, when you look at fintech in investment management, because you need to be able to employ fintech when you're now looking at this interaction, and you also need to be able to employ fintech when you're looking at this interaction as well. So you need to find out exactly, so how is technology evolved so that these relationships are better managed. Now, going forward, what do we see? The next chapter that they cover then. So if you look at the next chapter that they cover, they look at capital market expectations, right? So now they look at capital market expectations, and then they give us the framework and macro consideration, and then they give us the forecasting of asset class returns. So when you look at this relationship, we're basically saying, now that the fund manager or the investment manager has met with the client, then the client is now put in to say, for me to be able to this investment, this is the minimum return of requirement or return objective. So for me to be able to achieve this objective, this is the minimum return requirement that we need, right? Then based on that, they also take into account the risk and so many other factors as well, right? So from there, we now are going to come up with the issue where we're saying, now, how do we determine the returns? And these returns are going to be based on the return requirement, and these return, the capital market expectations as well, are also going to be based on exactly, so what are the forecasted returns from each what asset class? Because remember, from the asset class that are going to be investing the client's funds as well, how are we expecting them to perform? So that we are able to now to say, okay, fine, if this is the required return that the investor is saying that they want, and this is the expected return that we're expecting the different asset classes to be able to perform, ideally, we want a situation where we see that the expected return will be higher than what the required return, so that we're able to meet the return objectives. Because if we're able to meet the return objective of the client is happy. So for us to be able to do that, we now need to check to see exactly what is the macroeconomic outlook. Then from analyzing the macroeconomic outlook, we can be able to find out exactly, so what is the expected returns that we can now be able to determine from after we take into account the macroeconomic outlook as well. Then we can now be able to forecast the returns. But the main idea here is for us to say, overall, we need to be able to make sure that the expected return from our investments should be able to at least meet the required return of the client. So the main idea behind topic 3 is to now look at these different forms of returns, so that we're able to check and analyze to say, so from where we are considering investing, is the investment able to invest to meet the return objectives? That's the main idea so that's the main thing that we need to take on note of from that topic. Then from there, we are now going to be looking at asset allocation. And from there, we look at overview of asset allocation, the principles of asset allocation, and the asset allocation with the real world constraints. So when you look at asset allocation, this is where we're now going to be saying the funds that have been received from the clients, in what different asset classes, according to the different classification of the asset classes that we're going to be considering investing in there. How are we going to ensure that the asset allocation is able to meet this return requirement? So for example, if you categorize asset classes according to the category where we're saying, for example, we look at money market, then we look at bonds, then we look at real estate, and then we look at equity. Then we also have commodities as well that we're considering investing in. Then there are different asset classes that we can also consider looking at as well, right? So based on these different asset classes as well, we now need to check to see exactly based on, so what percentages are we put, for example, investing in money market? What percentages are we investing in bonds? What percentages are we investing in real estate? What percentage are we investing in equity? What percentage are we investing in commodities? So that at the end of the day, our expected return would be able to at least meet the required return. So that we're able to meet what? The return objective of the client. So for us to be able to meet the return objective of the client, what percentages are we investing in these different asset classes? So that's the main idea behind asset allocation. So with asset allocation, we're basically saying what percentages are we investing in these different asset classes? We can classify them according to this, but there's other ways that you can also classify the different asset classes. So, but we'll look at them later on. The simple version of it is when we look at something like this. So the main idea behind asset allocation is to ensure that if we invest a certain percentage here, a certain percentage here, a certain percentage there, a certain percentage there, how is the expected return of our portfolio, so that we are able to ensure that the expected return here would at least be able to meet the return requirement of the client. Are we on the same page so far? Any questions? Now, looking at topic 5, you see that topic 5 looks at currency management. So topic 5 looks at currency management. So when you look at currency management, we are basically saying when we are going to be investing, so when the funds are going to be invested, some of the funds are going to be invested domestically. So when the funds are invested, some of the funds are going to be invested domestically, and some of the funds are going to be invested in what? In the foreign markets. So some of the funds are going to be invested domestically, and some of the funds are going to be invested what? In the foreign market. Now, the most important thing is that for the funds which are invested in the foreign market, there is this exchange rate element. So for the funds that are going to be invested in the foreign market, there is this exchange rate element. So how do we ensure that we're able to manage the exchange rate risk? So how do we ensure that we're able to manage what? The exchange rate risk. Because remember, for the funds that are going to be invested in the foreign market, it would mean when we initially invest, the money is going to be converted into foreign currency. Now, when the money that is in foreign currency, or our investment which is in foreign currency, how is it going to be worth when it's now what? Disinvested and what? Taken back to the domestic currency as well. So which basically means that a favorable movement in exchange rate will end up what? Increasing the rate of return on the investments in foreign currency. And at the same time, an unfavorable movement in exchange rate will end up what? Negatively affecting the rate of return on the investments in foreign currency as well. So when it comes to currency management, you're basically saying the funds that you've received from the client, which are now being made available into the investment house, this investment house is going to be having what? Different investment vehicles. And some of the investment vehicles are going to be invested domestically. And some investment vehicles are going to be having a foreign investment type of element as well. So if the money is going to be invested in the foreign markets, how do we now make sure that we're able to manage the exchange rate risk? So with us, when we look at what? Currency management. And then we also look to see exactly, so what are the tools available to the manage or to the portfolio managers or the fund managers to ensure that they're able to mitigate the risk of exchange rate risk. Now, when it comes to the investment as well, when it comes to the investments that the portfolio manager can invest in as well, they can also be split into different categories as well. So you have a situation where you can invest in fixed income securities, you can invest in equity portfolio, or you can invest in hedge fund as well. So which means in this case, we're basically saying, so how do you now determine or assess, or how do you ensure, or how do you now get a better understanding of exactly if you're going to be investing in fixed income securities, what are the fixed income securities? How are the fixed income securities invested? And what are the factors which affects the returns if you're going to be investing in what? Fixed income securities. That's why you see that here, we look at the overview. That's why you see that here, we are going to be looking at the overview of fixed income investments. So overview of fixed income portfolio management. And we also look at the liability driven and index based strategies as well. So with the liability driven, this is basically where you're saying that you are now having, say, we have a potential liability in the future. So how do we ensure that our investment is able to mitigate or meet or to grow enough to be able to meet that potential liability? Then you're also having a type of investment where fixed income investment strategy where you can now consider index-based strategies, where you are basically trying to mimic a particular index for fixed income so that your portfolio is basically having more or less the same returns as that of a particular index as well. So which means based on this, these are the strategies that one portfolio manager can now be able to follow as well. Then, apart from investing in fixed income securities, the portfolio manager can also invest in equity portfolios as well. So which means if you check under that, they look at the overview of equity portfolio management, passive equity investing, and also active equity investment strategies as well. So which means when it comes to equity portfolio investment, we're now trying to find out exactly, so how do we check or make a decision to say we can invest in equity? What is the risk involved? What is the risk return relationship in equities? And what are the strategies that can be employed or implemented when you're looking at investing in equities? It's either you do passive equity investing. So passive equity investing is where you're saying that you're investing today, then you wait after a period of time, then you disinvest or you make a particular decision on whether you want to continue investing or not continue investing. So which means the difference now, when you look at the active equity investing as well, this is basically where you're saying that the portfolio manager is trying to generate excess returns. So which means there'll be a particular benchmark of the minimum return that the investor needs. Then the portfolio manager is going to try to have a situation where the return of the portfolio would be more than the return of a particular benchmark or the required rate of return as well. So with that way, it basically means that with active equity investing, the portfolio manager is trying to generate what? Excess returns. And these excess returns, we refer to them as what? Alpha. So that's the type of investment that we're going to be looking at when you look at fixed income and equity portfolio investments as well. So that's another different type of what investment vehicle as well. Then there's also hedge fund strategies as well. So another way of investing is where investors can consider going the hedge fund investment strategies as well. But remember, those ones, there are certain minimum requirements that an investor needs to be able to meet for them to be able to invest in hedge funds. And even in hedge funds as well, there are also certain minimum requirements or the certain type of clients that they are going to be pursuing as well. Because remember, these are high risk type of generally there's more autonomy that is given to the fund manager if you compare them to the other types of investment vehicles, like for example unit trusts and those are the endowment type of investments as well. When it comes to hedge fund strategies, there's more room that is given to the portfolio manager, and because of this, we need to find out exactly. So, what are the different strategies that are going to be followed when it comes to hedge fund investing as well? So, which means you need to find out, and you need to be able to have an understanding there of the different strategies as well. So, based on this, we are able to now find out exactly. So, with the money that is invested for the client as well, what are the different strategies that can be utilized to be able to invest that money as well? Are there any questions so far? Any questions? On the next section, for topic 9, they also look at private wealth management. And here they say they look at overview of private wealth management, and then they also look at the topics in private wealth management as well. So this is basically where you're now looking at a situation where you are looking at investments, but not only investment for you are looking at high net worth type of investments as well. So you look at private wealth management, it becomes a very comprehensive type of management where you are dealing with clients or institutions where they are looking at it's going to be mainly high net worth type of clients. Because remember, for you to be able to for the client to be able to qualify for the private wealth management, there's minimum requirements that they need to be able to have as well. So from there, we can now be able to find out exactly, so how does one comprehensively look and assess on the different investment strategies or on the whole portfolio of private wealth clients, and exactly how do they now make a decision on where to invest that money when it comes to private wealth management as well. Then topic 9 looks at institutional investors portfolio management. And yet they say, so now when it comes to investment management, we see that the investors can either be individual investors or they can be institutional investors. So they can be individual investors or they can be institutional investors. So when it comes to institutional investors portfolio management, this is where we are basically looking at the managing and analyzing the portfolio management of institutional investors, where you are basically saying that, for example, you are investing the money or you're investing the funds for institutions as well. So as an institution, how do you now ensure that you're able to actually how do you make the decisions? What are the risk return objectives, and exactly what are the constraints that you're likely to encounter when from an institutional investment portfolio perspective as well? Then now that we have seen the different strategies, we have seen the different platforms in which parties can invest in. We have also seen the different classifications of the different investments as well. The next thing that we need to look at is the portfolio performance evaluation. So over time, remember we said when we are deciding exactly where the money is going to be invested by the investment house, our aim is to be able to do this, right? Is to be able to have a situation where the returns, the expected return are higher than the required return. So now, When it comes to portfolio performance, portfolio performance evaluation, you are now going to say, how is the required return? How is the required return, which can be, how is the benchmark, if it's a benchmark, compared to the return of the portfolio, which is the actual return of the portfolio. And ideally, you want to be able to have a situation where the actual return of the portfolio is more than that of the required return, or is more than that of the benchmark. So in the last chapter there, we're now going to be looking to say, how do you assess the performance of the portfolio managers? Because remember, the fund managers or the portfolio managers are the ones who are going to be managing the money. So our aim is to now find out exactly how do we assess to say this portfolio manager is doing well, or this portfolio manager is really not doing well as well. And what are the implications, and how do we now assess our decision on exactly the choice of portfolio managers as well? So do you see that the different learning units or the different topics, they are basically looking at this skeleton of this relationship, where you're saying there is the parties who have excess funds, and there's the parties who need that excess fund as well. So which means that the investment house, which is the financial institution, is going to be facilitating that, where the client is excess funds. So these fund managers are the ones who are now going to be allocating those resources. Do you see that this principle is based on the basic economic principle, where you say you want to make sure that the resources are based, you want the best financial use as well. Because remember, if the resources are able to be utilized in the best interest or in the best available uses as well, it basically means that you're able to maximize the returns for the client in this case. So we need to find out exactly. So the whole idea behind this particular module of Inv4801, which looks at portfolio management, is where you are now looking at the different elements when you look at this relationship. So what are the different elements involved when you look at this relationship? Because remember, the investment house wants to be able to make money for itself, and also wants to be able to make money for the client as well. So how do we manage this relationship? Are we on the same page? Any questions so far? So today we are going to look at learning unit 1. So remember what I told you if you were in the previous class. When we prepared the timetable, we were of the understanding that the registration was going to be ending on the 7th of March, but seems like the registration was pushed to the 31st of March as well for students to be able to register. Although we are going to be continuing with the classes for the month of March, we're not going to be moving as fast as we usually do, but after that, we're going to make sure that we move according to that, because no matter what happens, we need to make sure that between March until end of October, we go through the different study units or learning units, so that November, December, and January, if you're going to be writing in February as well, it would mean that we need, no matter what happens, we always have to make sure that we allocate that time towards revision. And for Inv4801, it would mean during the revision period, you will see that we're going to be picking and choosing questions as well. And we're also going to be creating questions based on, because there are some topics which are not necessarily in the previous textbook as well. So because of this, you will see that there are some sections which are still relevant. So there are some sections which are still relevant. We're going to be picking out questions from those ones as well. And then there are also some new sections where we're going to be picking out questions either from the workbook or from the textbook or wherever. We're going to be able to gather that information as well, so that we make sure that there's a balance when preparing you for the exam, so that when we go to the exam, whether it's going to be in January next year or February next year, you have all the information that you need for you to be able to answer the questions in the exam as well. So it also means that since this is an introduction of the new textbook, where there is need for us to be able to consult with the lecturer, we need to make sure that I'm going to say this section, please check with the lecturer so that we have clarity. This section, please check with the lecturer so that we have clarity, so that no matter what happens, at the end of the day, before you guys write the exam, we should be on the same page with the lecturer as well. So please make sure that if I say, please clarify this with the lecturer, we have to make sure that we ask those questions with the lecturer. Because if you are a new group, we have to ask those questions with the lecturer so that we're able to have as more comprehensive information as possible. Are there any questions? All right. So looking at topic 1. So looking at topic 1, if you check in the study guide where we look at topic 1, topic 1 looks at professionalism, right? So under that section, we look at professionalism and fintech in investment management. For today, we're going to look at professionalism. Then in the next class, we're going to be looking at fintech. And then when we're done with that, we move on to capital market expectations as well. So under assessment criteria, they say the understanding of professionalism and fintech in investment management will be demonstrated by explaining professionalism in investment management, describing expectations of investment professionals, and ability to discuss the framework for ethical decision making. So those are the 3 main outcomes we need to be able to take note of when it comes to learning unit 1, which looks at professionalism. So from there, if you check in the textbook, under introduction, they say the sections covering ethics and professional standards demonstrate that ethical behavior is central to creating trust. So professional behavior is equally important. So professions help maintain trust by establishing codes and setting standards that establish a framework for ethical behavior and technical competence. So professions also set wider goals of gaining and maintaining the trust of society as a whole. So in this regard, professions have a sense of purpose that society values. So this chapter explains attributes of professions and establishes what is expected of investment professionals. So the need for professionalism has never been so important as we are going into the future as well. If you look at the most recent history, from a South African perspective, we are looking at a case where we are dealing with state capture. We're also looking at a case where there is a lot of there's companies that have been caught up in scandals as well. Like, for example, if you look at the case of Steinhoff, where there was a lot of cooking of the books there, and where you also look at auditors as well. Which auditing house was recently in a lot of trouble? What's the name of that audit house?
KPMG.
KPMG, yes. When it comes to KPMG as well. Yes. So you see that all these developments have resulted in an ever so important need of professional bodies. Because remember, professional bodies, what they do is they make sure that they prepare the individuals into their different disciplines as well, so that they are able to actually act in a professional manner, which is basically able to protect, especially the client as well. So which means that in this case, we need to make sure that the professional bodies, what they do is that they prepare the individuals so that they're able to act in the best interest of society as a whole. And because of this, that's why you see that many individuals as well, if you go back to look at the case of our state capture and the companies that were also implicated in state capture as well. And also if you look at the most recent cases of others, so many other companies that also had scandals as well, you will see that professional bodies, they usually come in and then they try to if where possible, they now impose penalties on certain individuals as well. Even if you look at it from, like, for example, from a law society perspective as well, and so many other professionals as well, there is need for regulation, and this is where the professional bodies come in. Reason being, historically there has been so much emphasis on profitability, where you find that many professionals were just pursuing the goal of the firm. The goal of the firm is maximizing shareholders' wealth, which means that in the short run, they want to pursue profits. But now the problem is you don't want a situation where professionals are just pursuing profits at the expense of ethics as well. So there has to be a balance. So it also basically means that in their pursuit of profitability in the short run, and in their pursuit of maximizing shareholders' wealth, there has to be an element that also brings in of ethics as well. Because at the end of the day, whatever happens, the main idea with professionalism is that an individual needs to conduct themselves in the best interest of of society. So with that in mind, if you go to page 2, we look at professions. And here they say, a profession is an occupational group that has specific education, expert knowledge, and a framework of practice and behavior that underpins community trust, respect, and recognition. So most professions emphasize an ethical approach, the importance of good service, and empathy with the client. So do you see that professional bodies, they are also going back to this relationship as well. So professional bodies are also going back to this relationship to say, how do we regulate this relationship? How do we regulate this relationship? And how do we regulate this relationship and the investment house? Because remember, you might have a situation where these ones they are now caught in a situation where they're saying, okay, fine, how do we mitigate the interest of the employer, which is the investment house, against the interest of the client as well? So which means that in this case, this is where the professional bodies are basically comes in, mainly because they are there to try to regulate these relationships, and because there are so many factors that comes in when it comes to these type of relationships as well. So with that in mind, on section 2.1, we look at how professions establish trust, right? So what do we see? The reason why professions want to establish trust is mainly because in every economic system, or in every financial system as well, financial systems are based on trust. If there's no trust in the financial system, what is going to happen? No one is going to want to invest their money. Those parties who have excess money, what are they going to do? If they don't have a trust in a financial system, look at what is happening in Zim. When people don't have a trust in the financial system, they put their money under the mattress. So what does that mean? The money that could have been used in the economic system to grow the economy is now not being efficiently utilized. So which means the professional bodies, their main mandate is to ensure that they are able to establish trust when it comes to these relationships as well. Because if trust is established in these relationships, it basically means that the economic resources are going to be more efficiently utilized. And if the economic resources are able to be efficiently utilized, there's going to be economic growth. And if there's economic growth, that's when you see that the standard of living of society also is expected to improve. That's why you see that, for example, there's been a lot of talk of now when you look at the relationship between the institutions that are holding billions and billions of money, and where now they're having a situation where the money is being hoarded because they don't have confidence now or how the economy is going to be doing as well. So for there to be that relationship, there has to be trust in the economic system, because if there's trust in the economic system, the different parties are going to be playing their part in the economic system. And if they play their part in the economic system, it also means that there is going to be more efficient utilization of resources. And if there is, then it basically means that we're now going to be able to achieve economic growth, which also ends up now having a situation where if more efficient resources are, if resources are going to be more efficiently utilized, there's going to be we're now going to be having a situation where we're able to fight issues such as unemployment and crime as well, because it all goes back to the issue of trust, where with trust there's more efficient utilization of economic resources as well. So on section 2.1.1, they say professions normalize practitioner behavior. So professionalism is underpinned by the code of ethics and standards of conduct developed by professional bodies. That's why you see that many individuals who are at a decision-making position in many organizations as well, they belong to a particular professional body. So which means in that case, it basically means that there is standardization of code of ethics and standards of conduct as well. So which means because of that, it also means that they are now going to be having a situation where you know that if a particular party or a particular decision maker does not transgress that particular code of ethics or a particular professional standard as well, it means that they are going to be penalized on that as well. So which basically means that this is where the professional bodies basically come in. The standardization of practitioner behavior. And that's why you see that in many cases now, the professional bodies have grown in such a way that if you look at the CFA Institute as well, it has grown in such a way that it's got a very big footprint across the world, which means that the bigger the footprint across the world, the more standardized in the practitioner behavior, because everybody knows exactly that. You know that if you're going to be dealing with a practitioner who's got a CFA charter holder, it basically means that the way they conduct themselves, you already know that whether you go to South Africa or you go to the US or you go to China, they are going to be conducting themselves according to those code of ethics and standards of conduct as well. Then the next one is professions provide a service to society. So there is an obligation for professionals to go beyond codes and standards. So professionals should advocate for higher educational and ethical standards in the industry, individually and through their companies. That's why you see that many companies now, as part of the employee developments, they basically pay for some of their employees to belong to the professional bodies, and they ask them to now write those board exams as well, mainly because at the end of the day, these professional bodies as well, they are basically there to actually provide a service to society. Because if there's standardization of conduct, if we know that the individuals within the particular professional body are going to handle themselves according to this particular standard as well, it basically means that we're also in a way protecting society, because we don't want to have a situation where there are so many individuals who are just acting on their own without belonging to a professional body. Because if that is the case, it basically means that you are now leaving room for there to be no control in their own activities, which might end up having a situation where they don't act in the interest of of the client as well. The third one is, they say professions are client focused. So here they say an integral part of a profession's mission is to develop and administer codes, best practice guidelines, and standards that guide an industry. So these codes, standards, and guidelines help ensure that all professionals place the integrity of their profession and the interests of clients above their own personal interests. So at a minimum, professionals must act in the best interest of the client, exercising a reasonable level of care, skill, and diligence. So the obligation is to deliver a high standard of care when acting for the benefit of another party, which is what we call fiduciary duty. So which means professionals have a fiduciary duty to ensure that they act in the best interest of the client. So do you see that professional bodies are there to actually regulate this relationship that I've given you just now. So that's basically what they do. They are there to ensure that the professional bodies are able to make sure that whoever is going to be dealing with the clients, they act in the best interest of what? Of the client as well. Then the fourth one, they say professions have high entry standards. So here they say membership in a profession is a signal to the market that the professional will deliver a high quality service of a promised standard, going beyond simply academic credentials. So professions develop curricula that equip future professionals with competence, including knowledge, technical skills, and ethics. That's why you find that, for example, if you look at the CFA Institute, they have a situation where they say minimum requirement, you should be having a degree or working towards having a degree. And some institutions as well, they also say you should be having a certain number of years as experience as well. So from there, now they now say, okay, fine, how do we sharpen this person to ensure that they're able to deliver the best professional advice, with advice of the best professional assistance that they can deliver to what? To the client as well. So which means, how do we ensure that these individuals are now competent and there is what? Standardization of their competence as well. So which means, that's why you see that they say professions have high entry standards, which means that there are certain minimum requirements that you need to be able to have for you to be able to join a particular profession. And in some cases, or in most cases, they want you to be having an undergrad degree or whatever, or working towards a particular undergrad degree as well. Then the fifth one, they say professions possess a body of expert knowledge. So here they say the repository of knowledge developed by experienced and skilled practitioners is made available to all members of a profession. So this knowledge helps members work effectively and ethically and is based on best practice. So which means, in this case, this is where we're saying the individuals who are going to be belonging to a particular profession as well, they will try as much as possible to share the knowledge that they have to other members as well. So which means that if you're belonging to a particular body, professional body as well, it basically means that you're now having a situation where constantly, if you check on your emails, if you look at it in practice, if you check on your emails, constantly you get this information, you get invited to a conference, you get so much information, so that at the end of the day, you are the experts who are in a particular field as well. They're able to share their knowledge as well. And if they're able to share their knowledge, how do you now access that knowledge? By belonging to what? A particular professional body. Then the sixth one, they say professions encourage and facilitate professional development. So here they say entry into a profession does not on its own guarantee that an individual will maintain competency and continue to uphold professional standards. So after qualification and through the working of a professional working life of a professional, there will be changes in knowledge and technical skills to perform certain jobs, in technology and standards of ethical behavior, in services that can be offered, and in the legal and business environment in which professional services are delivered. So we're basically saying professional bodies as well, they also ensure that their members, even, for example, if it's CFA, just because you're a charter holder does not mean that it ends there. Over time, just like software on a computer system, over time, the software needs to be updated. So does the skills that the individual would have qualified to be holding a particular qualification as well, which basically means that over time, even if the individual qualifies to be holding a particular whatever professional qualification that they are going to be having as well, over time, they also need to be constantly getting updated information. That's when you see that over time they need to be they give you information, they give you, like, for example, they make sure that they constantly give you sort of assessments, just make sure that you're up to date with whatever is happening in the world around you as well. Because if it wasn't the case, you'd find a situation where someone would have qualified as a CFA charter holder, in year 2000, if they had not been developing their skills, if they're not getting information from the professional bodies, if they were not able to now constantly attend conferences, for example, within the professional body society as well, what is going to happen? It means their skill, although they are a charter holder, but their skill is now becoming obsolete, because we know that in the real world, the economic world, the markets are constantly changing. There are so many factors that are also causing what changes in the financial markets. Like, for example, the advancements in technology. So you don't want a situation where someone is considered to be a CFA charter holder, but they don't know how to type. They don't know how to send an email. Mainly because when they qualified, they did it 30 years ago, but now they are not up to date anymore. So which means that they have to make sure that constantly they encourage the professional development of the individuals within their society as well. Then next, we look at, they say, professions monitor professional conduct. So here they say, members of a profession must be held accountable for their conduct to maintain the integrity and reputation of an industry. So doing so often involves self-regulation by professional bodies through monitoring and imposition of sanctions on members. So that's why you see that a couple of people who were mentioned and investigations were done when it comes to the state capture as well. Some of the people have already some of the professional bodies have already sanctioning them as well. Like if you look at the psycho body when it comes to the issue of Anoj Singh as well, where he was deemed to have transgressed certain ethical standards, and there was sanctions that were also imposed on him as well. So which basically means that over time, the other task or the other responsibility of the professional bodies is to ensure that their members are also adhering to professional code of code of ethics as well. The next one is professions are collegial, and here they say professionals should be respectful of each other even when they are competing. So at the very least, they must respect the rights, dignity, and autonomy of others. So you might find a situation where in a particular industry, there are different professional bodies as well, right? So at the end of the day, they are basically saying that whether in a particular company, one is belonging to this particular professional body, the other one is belonging to that particular professional body as well. They must ensure that they are working together for the best interest of society as well. Whether you are belonging to CIMA, or you're belonging to CFA, or whatever body that you're going to be belonging to as well. Even sometimes if they are competing as well, it means that they must make sure that whatever happens, there must be harmony, because at the end of the day, these professional bodies, they are should be acting in the best interest of society. Then the ninth point is that they say professions are recognized oversight bodies. So here they say many professional bodies are not-for-profit organizations with a mission emphasizing excellence, integrity, and public service. So although it is the responsibility of individual professionals to remain competent, an oversight body typically monitors this responsibility. So which means that's why you see that over time, they must ensure that they are able to monitor the individuals, individual members of the society or of the professional body, to ensure that they are competent as well. Then the 10th one, they say professions encourage the engagement of members. So here they say participation by members as volunteers is part of the essence of a profession. So professionals are more likely to refer to, use, or adhere to values that have helped develop and and they typically have the power as members to revise these values. So a good professional will want to mentor and inspire others who recently entered and wish to enter the profession. So professionals should be willing to volunteer to advance the profession and engage with peers to develop expertise and ethics as well. So they can do that by mentoring, they can by conducting conferences or different ways as well to ensure that those ones who are also joining the profession are also be able to be updated on what's really happening, so that they're able to be able to be held, so that they're able to be held, so that they're able to excel on their own as well. So are there any questions? Are there any questions when it comes to the part played by professional bodies in society? Are there any questions? Remember, on our learning outcome, they ask us to explain professionalism in investment management, right? But for us to be able to explain professionalism, the reason why we started with this is mainly because for you to be able to explain professionalism, you need first understand exactly what are these professions that they are talking about, and what is the mandate or the purpose of having these professional bodies as well. So from there, they also say professions are evolving. So to keep up with the changing times, keep up with the changing society as well, over time, professions have to evolve. So they need to be able to evolve to keep up with the changing, for example, changing technology, to keep up with the change, all these changes that you're finding across the world as well. The professions have to evolve as well. On the third section of the chapter, we look at professionalism in investment management. So we look at professionalism in investment management. And on paragraph number 3, they say the investment profession has become increasingly global as capital markets have opened up around the world. So investment professionals may seek cross-border opportunities, or may coordinate, or may need to relocate between offices within multinational assets and management firms. So regulatory coordination across borders and the emergence of technology are contributing factors to this globalization of investment management. So various investment professionals, professional bodies have developed in individual countries, and several of these bodies have expanded internationally. So in addition, several other professional bodies, including those focused on actuarial and accounting services, have investment professionals as members. Then on the next section, on page 6, they look at the trust in investment industry. And on line number 4, they say, in comparison to clients, investment professionals are also expected to have superior financial expertise, technical knowledge, and knowledge of the applicable laws and regulations. So there is a risk that clients may not be fully aware of the conflicts, risks, and fees involved. So investment professionals must always handle and fully disclose these issues in a way that serves the best interests of clients. So compliance with codes of ethics and professional standards is essential, and practice must be guided by care, transparency, and integrity. That's why you see that, for example, if a client says that they have 1,000 rand, or they say, for example, a client says that they have 5,000 rand lump sum today, they want to invest, the investment advisor doesn't just take that money and then just say, okay, this one we invest it there. There has to be standardized processes and procedures that are followed to ensure that the client fully understands what they're investing in. That's why you see that there has to be a process where the investment manager gathers the information. The investment manager explains the different type of investments available to the client, so that the client is able to also participate in the decision making, depending on exactly what they're trying to achieve as well. Like, for example, when it comes to the relation between the investment advisor and the client as well, that's why you see that now, to ensure that the client fully understands the information, the investment advisor now has to go through the fund fact sheet. If it's unit trust investments or whatever type of investment it is, whether it's hedge funds or whatever investment it is, the investment advisor has to go through the fund fact sheet to say, oh, this is the type of investment that we're considering investing in. Then from this particular type of investment, this is where the money potentially would be invested in, or this is where the money is invested in. If it's a unit trust investment or other type of endowment policies, although with hedge funds, yeah, there is disclosure, but sometimes not all the information is available, but they try as much as possible to give you that information. And then they also tell the client, okay, fine, based on the different asset classes that are invested in as well, this is how much risk you're going to be taking. And the client needs to be able to understand that the risk that I'm taking, how much risk am I taking? So you see that in most cases, when it comes to risk, the main categories of risk would be a conservative investment, a moderate investment, or aggressive investment. And what do we see when you look at this type of investments? As you move going in this direction, risk is increasing. And at the same time, the expected returns are also increasing as well. So conservative investments, the risk is low, but the expected returns are low. Moderate investments, the risk is a bit higher, but the expected returns are also a little bit higher. And aggressive investments, the risk is also very high, but at the same time, the expected returns are also going to be very high. So the main idea here is that you want to make sure that the client not fully understands, but as much as possible understands what they are investing in. So that, remember we said it's expected return, which means if the investment does not perform according to plan, the client should be knowing that, okay, fine, it's because I took on risk. And because I'm taking on risk, it does not necessarily mean what? The returns are guaranteed. So if you look at it historically, you have a situation where the investment advisors were saying, if you invest in this investment, you get a certain amount of return. And if you invest in this investment, you get a certain amount of return. Now the client is expecting that. So it means that I'm guaranteed that every year I'm getting a 40% return if I invest aggressively. So which means this is where the problem was, where the client is expecting a 40% return, and then after a year, they get minus 5% return. So they've lost money instead of getting the 40% return. So which means the client needs to be able to understand this risk-return relationship and exactly what it means when they are going to be taking on a risk as well. Are we on the same page? Any questions? Anyone lost? So the reason why we are emphasizing all this is mainly because we need to ensure that there is trust in the investment industry. There is trust in the investment industry. Why? Because if the client knows exactly what they're jumping into, if things go wrong, they would know that, okay, fine, it's what we discussed that can happen as well. And if things go right, because the client will never complain, but if things go right, they should know that, okay, fine, because I'm taking on a higher risk type of investment, the expected returns are also higher, although those returns are not necessarily what guaranteed as well. So the reason why there's need for this issue of transparency, issue of integrity, and issue of care, which is basically due diligence, is mainly because we want to ensure that the client has trust in the investment industry. Because if they have trust in the investment industry, what does that mean? It basically means that whenever they have excess resources, what are they going to do? They are going to be trusting the investment industry to say, here is my excess resources that I have. Can you please put them to the what? Best use in the economy. And if they're able to do that, the economy grows. Can you move on? The next paragraph we're going to look at is where we say in many countries, the investment profession affects many key aspects of the economy, including savings, retirement planning, and the pricing and allocation of capital. So in most countries, skilled evaluation of the securities leads to more efficient capital allocation, and combined with ethical corporate governance can assist in attracting investment from international investors. So the investment profession can deliver more value to society when higher levels of trust and better capital allocation reduce transaction costs and help meet client objectives. So these reasons explain why practitioners, clients, regulators, and the government have supported the development of an investment management profession. On the next section, we look at the CFA Institute of as an investment professional body. They give the historical background there. You can just go through it on your own. But what I saw, which is of interest there, is where they say the mission of CFA Institute is to lead the investment profession globally by promoting the highest standards of ethics, education, and professional excellence for the ultimate benefit of society. Remember, we said these profession bodies, they act and they are in the interest of what? Of society. So they need to be expected to be, they are expected to be acting in the interest of society. So here they say, the CFA Institute Code of Ethics and Standards of Professional Conduct promote the integrity of members and establish a model for ethical behavior. So CFA Institute candidates and members must meet the highest standards among those established by CFA Institute, regulators, or the employee. So where client interest and market interest conflict, the code and standards set an investment professional's duty to market integrity as the overriding obligation. So the advocacy efforts of CFA Institute aim to build market integrity by calling for regulations that align the interests of the firm and the clients.
Rhinos, may I ask you something? Is the CFA Institute the only investment professional body, or are there others? Because usually you only hear of the CFA Institute.
You see, there should be others, but the CFA Institute is like the biggest, is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, investment professional institute as well. Because if you look at the CFA Institute, it's got a very big footprint across the world. So I would think that there are other professional standards, because remember, any country can have its own professional body. Any country can have its own professional body, but at the end of the day, they usually the ones that people usually go for are the ones which has a higher footprint, because those ones with the higher footprint, it basically means that when you are having when you're a CFA charter holder, it's easier for you to get employed across the world. Because if you become a CFA charter holder today, it means even if you go to the US, there's no stories. They know that, okay, fine, you are, or automatically you are expected, you are expected to be what? Having a certain minimum what? Code of standard as well. That's why you see that when you look at the CFA Institute as well, passing the exams is very difficult. Remember, there are 3 levels, and when it comes to passing the exams, it's very, very difficult, because if you look at the pass rates historically, you look at the pass rate where the pass rate varies between 40% to 40 something percent there of the overall students. So it's very difficult, mainly because they want to make sure that they have a very strict standard to ensure that even if you go work anywhere else in the world, you are expected to be knowing exactly what you're doing as well.
Right, thank you.
All right. So any country or anyone would be able to form their own professional body or investment professional body, but in most cases, what you find is that many people, they prefer the professional bodies with a bigger footprint because it makes them very flexible to be able to be accepted across anywhere across the world as well. Are there any other questions? Can you take a few minutes break until 15:35? So can we take a few minutes break until 15:35? And then at 15:35, we look at section 4, which looks at expectations of investment professionals. So can you take a few minutes break until 15:35? Then at 15:35, we look at section 4 of the chapter. All right, can we continue? Looking at section 4, we look at expectations of investment professionals, and under that section, they say, thus, the issue faced by CFA charter holders and other financial industry participants is not choosing between professional values and business values. Rather, it is balancing that ever-competing pair in a way that places the best interest of consumers and clients above our own corporate and personal interests. So all investment professionals would do well to develop a keener awareness of the big picture of our financial system, a profound introspection into how we can make it better, a knowledge of the long history of finance, and a deep involvement in fostering in our profession the highest character it requires if we are to serve investors effectively, honestly, and prudently in the years ahead. And this is a quotation from John C. Bogle, in the book, Balancing Professional Values and Business Values. So here they say, characteristics and behavior expected of all professionals include honesty, integrity, altruism, continuous improvement, excellence, loyalty, and respect for colleagues, employers, and clients. So extremely high standards, but not perfection, are expected, including behavior in public. So professionals should, through their actions, uphold the reputation of the profession and be responsible, accountable, and reliable in their work. So professionals should reflect regularly about the cycle of self-improvement, starting with self-assessment, identification of knowledge gaps, compiling a program of continuing professional development to fill those gaps, putting the new learning into practice, and then evaluating the results in order to inform the next cycle. So key duties of professionals are to provide independent advice, avoid or disclose conflicts of interest, and respect client information, objectivity, transparency, and confidentiality as well. So they're basically saying that over time, as the society is evolving, it also means that the professional bodies also needs to continue evolving as well. That's why you see that every now and again, the way that the CFA exam is set up is basically changing. So every now and again, you see that the textbook is changing for the CFA, the textbooks are changing, and every now and again as well, the way they set the exams is basically changing, mainly because they want to be able to keep up with the changing society as well. So here they say, the behaviors expected will vary by profession, but some attributes are shared by most professions. These include the duty to be honest and open in dealings, which covers all aspects of professional practice, ranging from writing resumes, presenting advice, record keeping, and achieving, to the greatest extent possible, informed consent from clients. So this means ensuring that the clients understand the consequences of decisions, the range of outcomes, and risks. So a client will not have the level of knowledge that they expect professional does, but the professional should not abuse this more specialized knowledge. There will at times be adverse outcomes for clients arising from errors in judgment and practice. So professionals should be prepared to acknowledge mistakes promptly, learn from them, and correct them, including making clients whole where appropriate. So some professional codes state that professionals must dissociate themselves from any violations of laws or regulation. So this means that individuals may need to act themselves in response to a certain event if they are unable to alter the conduct of others as well. So that's why you see that usually within certain industries as well, the professional offering advice as well, they are usually insured as well, so that if they give the wrong advice and they need to make the client whole, the insurance company would come in what and mitigate the risk of the liability in that case as well. So the main idea is to ensure that they're able to protect the client, and also the reason why they want to make sure that they protect the client is mainly because they want the clients to maintain the trust within the industry as much as possible as well. On the next paragraph, so I'm reading these paragraphs mainly because all the information that is stated in these paragraphs is very, very of much importance. And if you skip a particular section, you will see that you might fail to understand exactly what they're trying to explain in those sections as well. So here on the next paragraph, they say, during their careers, investment professionals may encounter dilemmas, including those with ethical implications. What they choose to handle, how they choose to handle these can be can have important implications for clients, trust in their profession, their employer, and even their own career. So the right balance between an employer's practice, codes, and standards may be unclear or nuanced. So during these situations, investment professionals should not avoid responsibility for acting, but they do need to consider carefully how to determine the facts of the issue and assess the implications for clients, their employer, and their own career. So investment professionals should understand how to apply judgment in relating to the codes and standards of their professional body, to their loyalty, to their loyalty, or to their employer. So ethical behavior means that an investment professional must be able to balance competing interests and motivations, even if that appears to create a personal disadvantage. So at times, professionals may need courage to uphold the highest ethical standards. So utilizing a framework for ethical decision-making can help investment professionals analyze conduct in the case of conflicting interests. So to prepare for dilemmas they may face, investment professionals should maintain and improve their ethical decision-making skills. That's why you see that even if you look at your qualification for CFA as well, one of the modules that you'll be doing would be ethics. So you are going to be looking at professional ethics, and you cover professional ethics, whether it's level 1, level 2, and level 3 as well. Whether you're doing level 1, level 2, or level 3, you're always going to be doing what? One of the modules that you're going to be doing is professional ethics. So here they say, professionals in general may opt to raise a concern with various parties, including the following. So where there is a bit of an issue there, they may need to raise concern so that they're able to speak up and maintain what? Their code of their ethical standards of behavior, where they say they can include that they can raise their concerns to colleagues or contemporaries, supervisors, a firm's compliance or ethics officer, a mentor outside the firm, a professional body hotline, senior individuals in the firm, a firm's whistleblowing line, or a regulator or law enforcement agency. So they say, when a dilemma occurs, raising an issue internally is often a good starting place and creates an opportunity for the independent internal review. So in seeking the advice of others, a professional should carefully consider confidentiality. So an employer's compliance function may focus on protecting the firm from the risk or consequences of regulatory breaches. So protecting the client and the firm may take priority over the position of an individual professional raising a concern. So it should be clear, however, that client interests supersede firm or individual interests in areas where there are regulatory consequences. So please make sure that you take note of this. Potential theory question. Section 5 looks at the framework for ethical decision making. And when you look at the framework for ethical decision making, we are going to be looking at the advantages and how the framework is also, how do they come up with the framework as well? What are the steps involved in coming up with what? With the framework. So here they say, laws, regulations, code of ethics, and professional standards of conduct can guide ethical behavior, but individual judgment is a critical ingredient in making principled choices and engaging in appropriate conduct. So one strategy is to increase trust in the investment profession is to increase the ability and motivation of market participants to act ethically and help them minimize the likelihood of what? Unethical actions. So firms can enhance the ability and the motivation of their employees to act ethically by integrating ethics into all decision-making activities. So an investment professional's natural desire is to do the right thing can be reinforced by building a culture of integrity and accountability in the workplace. So development, maintenance, and demonstration of strong culture of integrity within the firm by the senior management just give me a second, something wrong with my internet. All right. So we're saying development, maintenance, and demonstration of a strong culture of integrity within the firm by senior management may be the single most important factor in promoting ethical behavior among the firm's employees. So adopting a code that clearly lays out the ethical principles that guide the thought process and conduct the firm's and conduct that the firm expects from its employees is a critical first step. But a code of ethics, although necessary, is insufficient. We need to exercise ethical decision-making. We need to exercise ethical decision-making skills to develop the ability necessary for fundamentally ethical people to make good decisions despite the reality of conflicts. So a strong ethical culture built on a defined set of ethical principles that helps honest people engage in ethical behavior will foster the trust of investors, lead to robust global financial markets, and ultimately benefit society. So that is why ethics matters. Then remember, if you check on your learning outcome, they say you need to have the ability to discuss the framework for ethical decision making, right? So when you now look at the description of the framework of ethical decision making, they say when faced with decisions that can affect multiple stakeholders, investment professionals must have a well-developed set of principles. Otherwise, their thought process can lead to, at best, indecision, and at worst, fraudulent conduct and destruction of the public trust. So establishing an ethical framework to guide an investment professional's internal thought process regarding how to act is a crucial step to engaging in ethical conduct. Then on the next paragraph, on line number 4, they say, using a framework for ethical decision-making will help investment professionals to effectively manage, to effectively examine their choices in the context of what? Conflict of interest common in their professional obligations. Then they also say, such a framework provides investment professionals with a tool to help them adhere to a code of ethics and allows them to analyze and choose options to meet high standards of ethical behavior. So by applying the framework and analyzing the particular circumstances of each available alternative, the investment professionals are able to determine the best course of action to fulfill their responsibility in an ethical manner. So now, on the next paragraph, we now discuss what we deem to be the advantages of the ethical framework as well. So please take note of them, because potentially as a theory question, they can say, so what are the advantages of a decision-making framework, an ethical decision-making framework? So here they say, an ethical decision-making framework helps a decision maker see the situation from multiple perspectives and pay attention to aspects of the situation that may be less evident from a short-term, self-focused perspective. Then they also say, the goal of getting a broader picture of a situation is to be able to create a plan of action that is less likely to harm stakeholders and more likely to benefit them. So if a decision maker does not know or understand the effects of his or her actions on stakeholders, the likelihood of making decisions and taking action that harms stakeholders is more likely to occur, even if unintentionally. And finally, an ethical decision-making framework helps decision makers explain and justify their actions to a broader audience of stakeholders. Then they also say, an ethical decision-making framework is designed to facilitate the decision-making process for all decisions. So it helps people look at and evaluate a decision from multiple perspectives to identify important issues they may not otherwise consider. So using an ethical decision-making framework consistently helps develop sound judgment and decision-making skill and avoid making decisions that have unanticipated ethical consequences. So on the next section, we look at the ethical decision-making framework, like the steps followed in the ethical decision-making process as well, framework. So here they say the steps would be, you need to identify, consider, decide, or act, then you need to reflect as well. So when you're looking at identify, they say you need to identify the relevant facts, stakeholders, and duties owed, relevant ethical principles, and or legal requirements, conflict of interest. Then you need to consider the situational influences and behavioral biases, additional guidance, and alternative actions. Then from there, this will now allow you to decide and act. Then after you decide and act, over time, you're now going to be able to reflect to say, was the outcome as anticipated? And if not, why or why not as well? So going back to these steps, remember we said that the first step is to identify. So if you check on the second paragraph, after that exhibit, they say, in the first phase, you want to identify the important facts that you have available to you, as well as information that you may not have, but would like to have to give yourself a more complete understanding of the situation. So it is helpful to distinguish between facts and personal opinions, judgments, and biases. So you also want to identify the stakeholders and the duties that you have to each of them. So you will then identify relevant ethical principles and or legal requirements that might apply to the situation. So you should also identify any potential conflicts of interest inherent in the situation or conflicts of duties you hold to others. For example, your duty to your client may conflict with your duty to your employer. And remember what we said should be the best course of action to take there as well. So are there any questions when it comes to the first phase of ethical decision-making framework? Any questions on the first phase? So the first phase is basically you asking yourself, what am I dealing with? So which means that you need to gather as much information as possible. You need to gather as much information as possible for your decision-making, for your ethical decision-making. And you also need to find out exactly who are the different stakeholders that are going to be affected by what? By the decision as well. Then the second phase, you're now going to say, they say, in the second phase of ethical decision-making, you will take time to consider the situation influences as well as behavioral biases that could affect your thinking and thus decision-making. So during this phase, you may seek additional guidance from trusted sources, and you may turn to your compliance department for assistance, or you may even consult outside legal counsel. So seeking additional guidance is a critical step in viewing the situation from different perspectives. So you should seek guidance from someone possibly external to the firm who is not affected by the same situational influences and behavioral biases as you are, and can therefore provide a fresh perspective. So you should also seek guidance from your firm's policies and procedures and the CFA Institute Code of Standard and Code and Standards as well. So a helpful technique can be to imagine how an ethical peer role model might act in the situation. So that's the second phase. Then the third phase would be, the third phase of ethical decision making is to decide and act. So here they say, after you have acted on your decision, the fourth phase is to reflect on and assess your decision and its outcome. Was the outcome what you anticipated? Why or why not? So had you properly identified all the relevant facts, stakeholders, and duties owed relevant ethical principles and or legal requirements and conflict of interest? So had you considered the situation influences? Did you identify behavioral biases that might affect your thinking? Had you sought additional guidance? Had you considered and properly evaluated all the variety of alternative actions? You may want to reflect on the decision multiple times as the immediate and longer term consequences of your decision and actions become apparent as well. So that's basically the framework that you need to make sure that you follow. Then in conclusion, they say, using an ethical decision-making framework will help you evaluate situations from multiple perspectives, avoid poor decision-making, and avoid consequences that can result from taking ill-conceived course of action. So using an ethical decision-making framework is no guarantee of a positive outcome, but may help you avoid making unethical decisions. So are there any questions from the section where we look at the ethical decision-making framework? Are there any questions? So for the sake of the exam, please take note of this: the advantages of having an ethical decision-making framework, and also the phases that you need to follow when you are when you're looking at the ethical decision-making framework as well. So you need to be able to comprehensively describe the phases. You need to be able to now discuss the advantages of the framework as well. So please take note of this, because these are potential theory questions in the exam. Are there any questions from section 5? The next section, although it's not part of the learning outcome that was stated by the lecturer, but it's important for us to, since you are the first stream, we're going to cover this because it's important for us to cover ourselves as well. That's why you see that sometimes we're going over and above what is stated as the learning outcome, so that you can see how the different components are also linking together as well. So on the last section, we look at the challenges for investment professionals. And under that section, if you look at line number 6, they say, first paragraph, more specifically, the broad area of financial services ranked as the sector least trusted in both 2016 and 2017 when compared with the energy, consumer packaged food and beverage and technological sectors. So the financial services industry is increasingly viewed as not managing conflict of interest well. So this is why we find situations where you have rogue traders. If it's from a trading platform, we have accountants who are not acting in the best interest of the clients. We have auditors who are not basically doing their job. They are not basically what performing their tasks as well, mainly because of what the issue of ethical behavior and conflict of interest as well. So on the next paragraph on line number 3, they also say some regulators now require investment advisors to belong to a professional body, adhere to an acceptable code of conduct, achieve a minimum level of relevant education, commit to continuing professional development, and comply with sanctions for any wrongdoing as well. Then the other issue that you find when it comes to investment profession is that on the last paragraph of that page 11, line number 4, they say, globalization may bring challenges. However, if large global investment firms seek to establish their own standards and practices that conflict with the codes of conduct out from the professional bodies as well. So this might end up having a conflict. But if you look at the CFA Institute code of conduct, they usually say if you are given a lesser, stricter conduct, and if you are belonging to the CFA Institute and you are having a more stricter code of conduct, you always have to follow the stricter of the two as well. So that's basically how they try to go about mitigating the issues where the professional standards and practices from that are set for a particular organization might be a little bit different from what the professional body also expects of you as well. So they always say choose the stricter of the two. Then on page 12, they also say, perhaps the greatest challenge for the investment profession comes from technology. So rapid advances in computing power, data storage, and internet connectivity threaten to alter the definition of professional expertise and how it is applied to serve investors. So already, index replication, risk management, trade execution, asset allocation, algorithmic trading, and quantitative investment management are being automated, replacing or enhancing the many of the functions of the investment professional. So in developments in artificial intelligence are likely to accelerate this trend. So the effects are many, and from the need for evolved and continuing education programs to new codes of practice and standards that recognize the growing intersection between humans and artificial skill as well. So we're going to be looking at this in more detail when you look at chapter 2, which looks at the fintech in investment management as well. So are there any questions from chapter 1? Any questions from learning unit 1? Any questions? So please review what we have done. I'm going to post this video by Monday. I would have posted this video so that if in case there's something you didn't understand during the class, or maybe you for those who also missed the class, or whatever reason it is as well, you would be able to access the videos as well. So I'll make sure that I upload this video and make it available to you guys as well. Are there any other questions? Anyone lost? So remember, for Inv4801, since the textbook changed, we are very wary of making the videos from last year available. Although there are some topics which are going hand in hand, we don't have a situation where we give you a video and you go over that video with another textbook, and then it creates confusion where some sections are relevant and some sections might not be relevant as well. So to avoid that, we'll try as much as possible to make sure that we give you the videos of what we've covered as soon as possible, so that we make sure that you're able to use them to review as well. All right, if there are no questions, enjoy the rest of your long weekend, and please make sure that you you take note of the timetable. So please make sure that you take note of the timetable, because on the timetable, we already have classes that are set between now until end of October, when we should be done with it, going through the different learning units. Then from November, December, January, until you write in February, we're going to be now looking at what? At revision, where we're now going to be compiling questions for you. Then from the compiled questions, we're going to be using them now as revision. Then we'll make sure that the questions will upload them, and the video will upload it, and also the memo will also upload it as well. All right, enjoy your long weekend.